Welcome everybody who is joining at the moment. If you want to pop your name or where you're based into the chat box, that would be nice for us to see where you're all joining us from today. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes so that we can allow people time to join.
I'm not really sure.
Not sure if the chat box is working because we haven't had anybody. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working. Could our visitors try and use the Q&A box?
Well?
Oh, it says chat's disabled.
That's no good. Okay. Yeah, so if you guys can use the Q&A box to say hi, I'll see if I can activate the chat. Sorry about this. This is my fault.
That's good. We've got people putting their hands up already and letting us know what's happening. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Katrina and Abigail and Uzma, for letting us know. And hello and welcome to all of you today. So this is our early years initial teacher training webinar for our special intake due to start in 2024. My name's Helen Royston and I am head of EYITT. So today we're going to have a little talk about what the programme looks like and then hopefully answer any questions that you've got. And I'm joined today by Sian.
Hello everybody, my name's Sian Marsh. I'm the Director for Early Years and Initial Teacher Training at Best Practice Network, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to manage the Q&A box and answer any questions you've got as Helen goes through the slides.
Thank you, and we've also got Rihanna joining us today.
Hi everyone, I'm Rihanna. I'm from the EYITT team.
And we've also got Tom.
Hi everybody, I'm helping out with this webinar. Sorry about the chat box, but yeah, please use the Q&A box if you've got any questions. Thanks.
Thanks everybody. So this session today is for everybody. It might be that you've already started your application with us and you've got some questions about that. It may be that you've expressed an interest in joining our programme, or it may be that you want to come and find out more information because you're based in a setting or you're new to early years. So as we go through the slides, as we've said, please pop anything that you want to know in the question and answer box, and then there'll be lots of time and opportunity at the end as well to ask any other questions. So why would you want to train with us? Best Practice Network, we are the largest provider of early years initial teacher training, and we have been supporting early years teachers for a very long time, right back to when it was early years professional status, and then all the way through as it's changed to early years initial teacher training. We have a large number of trainees on our programme every year, including our autumn cohort that have just started. But this is a very special opportunity to join us because this is going to be our first ever January cohort starting in 2024. And currently there are no other providers that are offering this. It's just us. So we're very, very excited to open up recruitment and offer you this opportunity with a special limited number of places to join us in January. So this is what the different routes look like. There are two different options and we call them our GE or our GEB routes. So GE is what we call our graduate entry route, and that's for anybody that is not employed or not currently working in an early years setting. And then we have our graduate employment-based route, which is for anybody who is currently employed or working in an early years setting or in an early years age range within school. You can see on the screen that those two routes look slightly different in terms of the amount of placement that you're expected to do. So for a GE trainee, you do have to complete a minimum of 120 days of placement. Whereas if you're on the GEB route, it will depend which age group you're currently working in. But typically, most people have to do an extra placement of about 30 days. For some people, that might entail an extra placement as well. One of the really good things about both of the routes is that they are fully funded by the government. So as you can see, if you're on the GEB route, you are entitled to £7,000 that your employer can use to help to support you to complete the programme. Or if you choose the GE route, depending on your degree, you're also entitled to claim up to £5,000 in bursary payments to support you. For both of the routes, you'll have access to our training, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, and you'll be invited to join us either at a face-to-face venue, or you do have the option to join virtual sessions as well. So what does the programme look like? So as I've said, we do have different venues running across the country, but also we do offer virtual or online sessions for your training days. You have access to 2 online systems. So you get to join up to a system called Canvas, where you'll have access to lots of different modules and different study materials that you can use. You also have an online platform where you upload your work, and again, you're able to see how that's being assessed and what progress you're making. Everybody will have a personal tutor who is there to support you all the way through the programme, and also a lead trainer in your setting who can help you to organise your training time, access to your study time, and help you organise your placements. You'll also have the support of a mentor in your own setting, as well as when you go out onto placement. And for everybody, we make sure you've got an individual plan in place, which is going to help you to make the best progress you can and to offer you lots of challenge. So this is what it looks like. If you're successful in getting a place, everybody will start off with induction. So everyone will be invited to come and find out a little bit more about the programme, get to grips with the different IT systems that we use, and start off by taking a BKSB, which is a little maths diagnostic. Across each term, you'll be invited to the different training days. You also get to work on some different learning sequences in the different age groups, and then you'll have a termly review with your personal tutor and with your mentor to make sure that you're on track, or to set you some targets to move forward. You'll also see there's some slightly different things in the different terms. For example, term 2, you'll get the opportunity to develop a leadership plan and learn how to support and lead others in early years. And in your final term, you have 1 written assessment, which we call a reflective account, which is due. And then towards the end of the programme, we go into our recommendation period, and that's where we will assess you against the early years teacher standards. And as you can see at the bottom, you get at least 5 visits from your personal tutor whilst you're on programme, and a weekly meeting with your mentor and a weekly observation. So a little bit about the role of your setting mentor and your mentor when you go out onto placement. We do call our mentors expert colleagues, so they'll be there to help you developing your skills and your knowledge as a teacher. They're going to be people that can share their own experience and their expertise that they have already in early years and on different parts of the curriculum. They'll observe you each week so that you can get feedback on your practical teaching and your skills, and they'll continually set you targets. So they'll help you to make progress and help you to master those early years teacher standards by the end of the programme. They're there to help you, as I said before, so they can plan with you and they can monitor the work that you're doing and the different times that you spend in the different age groups. So what does that look like when we're talking about placement? We do have to make sure that everybody covers all of the age groups from birth through to 5 as a minimum. And that's to make sure that you get that variety and a real depth of experience, which will help you to meet all of those early years teacher standards. So for everybody, it will be at least 2 different settings. If you're employed in a setting, it'll be your employment setting and at least 1 other. For some people, for example, if you maybe work in a preschool setting, you may need to do 2 placements, because you do want to cover your school and you do want to cover your babies and your toddlers. As you can see, they need to be settings that are rated good or outstanding with Ofsted, again, to make sure that you're getting the opportunity to see lots of good quality practice. And it needs to be a setting that delivers the early years foundation stage or is working to national curriculum expectations. Thinking about those 2 routes that we looked at the beginning, slightly different for the GE trainees because they need to complete a minimum of 120 placement days. But there's lots of help on hand there. So we have a placement coordinator who will help you and organise and find you a placement setting and help you to block your time out. How will we assess you as you're going through the programme? So there's lots of formative assessment, as you saw on the overview. So we'll look at the observations that you're having from your personal tutor and your mentor. We'll assess your reflective account and we'll mark your sequences of work and see what progress you're making towards your targets each term. So all of that formative assessment leads into your summative assessment, and at the end we'll make a summative judgment against the teaching standards and we'll put you forward for your recommendation to be awarded your early years teacher status. So what do you need to have in order to apply for the programme? Or you may already be partway through this. In terms of entry criteria, everybody needs to have a degree. We need to have proof of your GCSEs, and that's GCSE English, Maths and Science, and those need to be a grade C or a grade 4 or above, or it could be a recognised equivalent. We do need to check that you've got the right to study and work in the UK, and we do need to check your competence in spoken and written English. Make sure that you have a satisfactory DBS check in place. And again, for GE trainees, slightly different. We do need to make sure that you meet the health and physical capacity to teach requirements. So there's a little health questionnaire that we'd need you to complete. If anybody's got any questions, again, around qualifications or application, please do use the question and answer box. And I'm sure Rihanna and Shan can help you. And if you're in that situation where actually you don't have a GCSE in English, Maths or Science, you do have the option to take an equivalency test. And Best Practice Network have managed to have a slight discount on this. So we work very closely with equivalencytesting.com. You can use the special code that you can see on the screen. And you've got 2 different options there if you need to take an equivalency in one of those subjects. So if you feel you're ready, you can just go straight for the exam. If you feel that you need some extra preparation and you want to revise and you want to study beforehand, then you've got the opportunity to take that option as well. So that's a little overview of the different things on programme and what it looks like. So as I said, we're here to help you with taking your next step today. So we've got our best practice email up there, as well as the other ways that you can obviously link in with us. You can find us on Twitter or you can find us on Facebook as well. So I hope that's been helpful in what we've shared so far. And we will open it up now if anybody's got any questions that they would like to ask. Or Shan, if there's anything you think we need to pick up on.
Yes, so I can summarise the questions. Sylvia's got a hand raised, which I've seen. It might be that we've already answered Sylvia's question in the Q&A, but just for everybody else, if you wanted to raise your hand, I do have the ability to release you to talk to the to Helen and the panel. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand. But just a couple of questions, Helen, that have come through already, just that perhaps a couple of things you could summarise. Could you explain about or just clarify about the £7,000 employer incentive?
Yes. So again, what we will do, if you are interested and you start your application, we will send you a copy of the funding guidance for the year that we're in, and that will explain what the employer incentive is and how that can be used. So it is a payment which goes to your employer. That's why it's called the employer incentive. And they can use it in different ways to help to support you on programs. So for example, they may use some of that money to pay for somebody to cover you whilst you're released out on placement, or it may be that they use some of that money to release your mentor so they're able to complete their observations for you. So if you're eligible, once we've done those checks, again, what we'll do is make sure that there is a payment made to your employer each month. That normally starts a month after you're on programme, just so we can make sure everything is in place, and they will receive a monthly payment to help with the different things that you need.
A couple of questions about placement, Helen, which you might be able to cover in one response. A couple of people from schools who are interested in applying, might be in HLTA or TA type roles, and wondering if they'd be able to move around the school for placement. Also, if you could clarify whether that needs to be a second setting. Somebody else working in a university nursery usually covers babies, toddlers and preschool. So do people have to have placements in 2 different settings?
Yes, so everybody, in order to meet the criteria, has to do placements in at least 2 settings. So again, it will be individual to you. So depending on where you're based, as Sian said, if you're in school, you would be able to cover the age groups relevant in your school. So for example, you could spend your time in reception class, developing your knowledge of phonics and maths, and you could also complete your Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 engagement in your current school, but you'd need to go to your second placement in order to cover the younger age groups for babies and toddlers, perhaps preschool, depending on what provision your school has got. Similarly, if I think for the university setting that you just mentioned there, if there's a nursery, you'd be able to cover the nursery age groups at the setting you're employed in, and then we would arrange an additional placement to make sure you covered the extra age groups.
And then just again, really related to placements, a quick question around the 30 days and how you would have to complete the 30 days.
Yep. Okay. So the other slight requirement with that is that you need to take your placement time in blocks of no less than 2 weeks. The only exception to that is the 5 days or the 1 week placement that you cover for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So it's always blocks of 2 weeks, but that's very much flexible in terms of what best suits you and your setting. So some people prefer to take that in one whole block, so that you can cover all of your age group in that time, but it would also be okay to split that and perhaps cover 2 weeks in the first term, return back to your setting, and then do another 2 week block later on.
Super. Okay, you mentioned the lead trainer and mentor role. Can that be the same person?
It can be the same person, and sometimes depending on the size of your setting, that's what will happen. Ideally, it would be good if it was 2 different people, but if it needs to be one person, we would just make sure that, again, they've got the time and again, they've got the experience to be able to cover both of those roles effectively so that you were supported properly.
Thank you. So somebody's asking about the January intake and the September intake. So is it possible to apply for the September 24 intake now?
It is possible to apply for whichever intake you think is most suitable. As we said, we do have a limited number of spaces for January. So if you're really keen, my advice would be to get your application in quickly and we'll make sure you get into that cohort. But if you feel that the autumn cohort, so next September, is better timing for you, then yes, you can put through an application for that timescale as well.
So there should be a drop down, shouldn't there, when you come to apply and you can select which intake?
Yeah.
So somebody has an international qualification, has a bachelor's degree in another country and didn't do a NARIC, but is doing a master's in the UK. How can they apply for EYITT?
Rihanna, do you want to advise on that one? Because I know you're really super good at all the international qualifications.
So we can accept the master's alongside a bachelor's degree. So what you would need to do is apply for a NARIC with your bachelor's degree, and then we can double check that it's all equivalent. And then you can kind of, once you've completed your master's, you can feel free to upload that as well, but we would need to go off of the bachelor's degree.
Super, thanks, Rihanna. Another question on placements, Helen. If somebody works in an academy, could they go to a different school that's part of the same academy for placement?
Potentially, yes. We would always say that it's good to get the best or the biggest variety of experience that you can. So again, if you had the opportunity to go to a different school that wasn't part of your trust, it might enable you to see again different teaching approaches, different policies. So we would always advise it would be better, if possible, to go and gain yourself a different experience, depending on which age groups you need to cover. So that's something that, again, if you put your application in, when we get to that point, your personal tutor will be able to have that conversation, find out more about you, more about your settings, and support you with making that choice for placement.
A question about the employed route. Do you have to be in a certain type of role in the nursery? What if you are unqualified or you're in an assistant type of role?
So in terms of what you're doing in your setting, there are some different criteria that we do need to meet. So we do have to prove that you're working for 16.5 hours directly with children. So we need to have that proof from your employer to make sure that you're in a suitable role where you're going to be able to work on those sequences of work in terms of observing, assessing, and planning the children.
Perfect. Another one, Rihanna, international qualifications. If somebody has GCSEs from a different country, now working in a nursery, do they need, would their grades be acceptable? Would they need to do the equivalency test?
So again, this would all be dependent on what a NARIC would say. So any overseas qualifications or high school certificates would have to be sent off to them and compared, and then bring them back to us. And then it will usually say whether or not something's equivalent. So only from that point would we then be able to best advise on what would be best to do next.
Perfect. GE route, Helen. If we've got somebody who wants to take, who's not currently in the UK and is unemployed, if they wanted to do the GE route, what would happen if they needed to go out of the country for a short period of time?
I think that would depend again on what the period of time was we were talking about. But in terms of being on programme, because you're accepted and if you are eligible for the bursary payments, so obviously it's linked into the funding, we do expect that you're available for at least 4 days a week for placement, and that would be for the duration of the programme.
Super, thank you. Okay, somebody else on the GE route saying that they need to provide details of a 10-day voluntary placement. Can we, as the provider, help somebody to secure a 10-day placement?
Yeah, I would say if you were really struggling in terms of finding a setting or somewhere to do that, obviously we do have our placement coordinator, so we could certainly see if there are any settings that we're already working with in your local area, or if not, again, we could provide you with some advice in how to find those or how to contact them. So yeah, please don't worry about your voluntary placement. We've got lots of links there.
Okay, question about training. So are the online lessons live? Could I catch up in the evening or outside of work hours?
We do expect that for your face-to-face or your virtual sessions that you are there in person. And that is because lots of the sessions involve activities and discussions, and you're really getting that opportunity to network with other trainees and to join in the learning that's happening with your facilitators. So we would say we would expect you to be there. However, if it was a one-off and you missed it, or you were poorly, or you couldn't attend a certain group, we do always record the sessions, so you would have the opportunity to catch up afterwards.
Super, thank you. Okay. If somebody was to start the programme in January, is there a chance that they could finish earlier than the 12 months if they wanted to?
Not really, because we do, again, have all our programme mapped out. So you've got certain tasks that you've got to complete. And again, there are certain amounts of time that you need to spend in each age group. So it will run for the course of the programme, and everybody will go through recommendation at the same point.
Super, thank you. Another one around qualifications, Rihanna, specialist subject for you. If somebody has a level 2 in key skills that's been accepted for a degree, would they need to retake those, or would they need different qualifications?
So if, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to accept the key skills, it would have to be GCSE or equivalent. So like what Helen was discussing earlier with the equivalencytesting.com, through one of those sort of websites. But unfortunately, key skills and functional skills and things like that just aren't something we're able to accept.
Yeah, super, thank you. Helen, back to the full-time, the graduate entry route. Do trainees have to find their own placements? Are placements unpaid, or are they ever paid for a placement? That might be linked to the bursary.
So yes, for GEs, we do have a placement coordinator. So again, if you're on the GE route, Evie, who is our placement coordinator, will find both placements for you. So again, at least 2 placements. And if you need a third one, she'll be there to organise them for you. And again, as Shan's just said, you will be entitled to bursary payments, which obviously you can use to support yourself whilst you're on the programme.
Perfect. And a question from Juliet, which I think is an extension of that, which is around the £7,000. That doesn't apply to a graduate entry applicant, does it?
It doesn't, no. So that's again where those 2 routes are slightly different. For GEB, because you're employed, you're entitled to the employer incentive. For GE, because you're not employed, you're entitled to the bursary payments.
Perfect. And can anybody change their route once they've started?
Unfortunately not, no. So sometimes that might happen at application stage, but you need to be really clear which route is the best route for you. Again, so that we can interview you and we can put the correct support in place depending on which route. So you can't switch route halfway through. You need to choose the one or have those discussions and then stick to that route.
Okay, so a couple of questions about placements, Helen, coming your way. So firstly, does the 14-day minimum block placement apply to both routes?
Yes. Again, thinking about the GEs, because you've got 120 days to do, yours are likely to be much bigger blocks. So for example, you might do 30 days in babies, 30 days in toddlers, 30 days in preschool. So they're likely to be larger blocks if you're on the GE route. If you're on the GEB route, that's when you need to have your minimum of 2 weeks, because it's a shorter placement that you're undertaking.
And if somebody does do their placement in blocks of 2 weeks and they have to take, do they have to take time off from their paid role? And if they do, what would happen in that instance?
So no, if you're out on placement, again, you are still employed by your setting. So again, you would still be receiving your usual wage. It would be down to the employer to use the employer incentive to cover you being out of setting with a member of supply staff.
And I think Bethan might mean if she was to work part-time, would she have to complete her placement as unpaid? But she could use the employer, or her employer could use the employer incentive, couldn't they, to pay her to work hours that she doesn't normally work for a placement?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, sticking with placements. Once placements are confirmed, do we need to work until the nursery closes, for example, at 6 or 7 o'clock?
So what we say for all of our placements is obviously you are there in the role as a teacher normally would be. So it would depend again on your setting and which route you were on. But for example, if you were going to an early years setting, they're obviously open for longer hours. but it would be about negotiating that with the setting and with your personal tutor, because again, it would be beneficial to see different times of the day. So for example, it may be that some weeks you start early and you finish early, some weeks you may start later and finish later, so you get the opportunity to see the parents. So it's very much down to which setting you're in, and agreeing that again with the employer or with the mentor. But we do need to make sure that we are completing what would be classed as a full day, so that again you're arriving before the children would arrive in school, and again you're not leaving before the children finish.
Perfect, thank you. So we're sticking with placements, Helen. It's a hot topic. How many hours do I have to complete in my placement per week?
We don't specify a particular hours, particularly for the GEB route. For GEs, we do say again, it's like a typical day, so like 6.5 hours. But depending on which route you are on, we do also build in with the employer and with your mentor some study time. So in line with the criteria from the DFE, you shouldn't be teaching for more than 90% of your working hours. So there's a 10% study time allowance that will be built in. And again, that might look different depending on what hours you work, or which setting you're in. But again, it can be flexible to meet your needs. So some people may choose to take a little bit of time each week. Some employers may prefer to build that up, and you have a longer period of time each month, so that you've got that opportunity to catch up on your paperwork.
Perfect. And a question from Amanda. I think she potentially might be a GE, but it does apply to GEBs as well. Is there any chance they can have a holiday whilst they're training for EYITT?
I think it would depend again when that holiday is. You know, obviously lots of you may have annual leave booked in anyway. So it's very much about making sure you're still available for your placement. And obviously those dates would be agreed in advance, and making sure that you've got the time and the opportunity to meet your deadlines. So again, it's not that people can't ever have a holiday or spend any time with the family. It's just about making sure that we plan and we organise our time so that you get to meet everything that you need to do.
Perfect. Last question, I think, on placements for a moment, and then I'll move on. I think this is a GE, potential GE candidate. Is the placement voluntary or paid while we're training?
No, the placement is, again, something that we have to do. So again, you do have access to the bursary payments, which can support you whilst you're undertaking your training.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a couple of eligibility questions here, Helen. And Brianna might jump in with some of those. So somebody has a visa, so citizenship is accepted, waiting on a passport. Can they apply?
Rihanna, do you want to go?
Okay. So if it would, I think it would be dependent on what you've currently received. So you can apply without a passport, but we would need a visa. So you would need to at least have your visa or your biometric residence card readily available, and preferably as well a share code if you have one of those. And then at that point, we can review further along the line.
Okay, so sticking with eligibility then. If somebody's got a bachelor's degree in engineering that they achieved outside of the UK, do they need to complete any English proficiency exams like IELTS or TEFL before applying for the course?
No, you don't. So again, it would just be a case of sending that off to EYITT or NARIC and getting one of those for yourself. And then, because we can accept it in any subject as long as it is equivalent to a level 6 degree.
Perfect. Rihanna, a quick side question for you from Sylvia. She sent you an email a couple of hours ago, but she was struggling to upload some documents. I don't know if you could have a quick look.
I can definitely have a quick look. I'll have a look after this.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, again, we'll stick with eligibility. Do you accept, Helen, a HND and a degree, or do I still need GCSEs?
We do still need GCSEs. So again, when we looked at the eligibility before, we need our GCSEs and we need our degree.
Perfect. Can you complete the equivalency testing alongside EYITT?
Unfortunately not, because it's criteria that we have to have in place before you start. It's not something that you can do whilst you're on programme. So again, it may be that you need to do your equivalency before starting.
Perfect. Isabella's got a good question, which I'm hopeful I can answer for you, Isabella. She says, if I take EYITT, do I have any, is there a course to do a top up so I can add Key Stage 1 to my EYITT? That would be qualified teacher status. So you can get early years teacher status and move on to qualified teacher status. That would be a second year where you would specialise in primary, either 3 to 7 or 5 to 11. And if you check out our website, you can see information about our primary QTS route there. Okay, 3 more questions left at the moment, Helen. You're doing really well. So testing your knowledge, your child development knowledge, what age would you class as babies or toddlers?
So for babies, we would tend to say they're under 1 year, so up to 12 months. And for toddlers, we'd be saying, again, sort of 18 months up to preschool, so under sort of 2.
Perfect. So if somebody did not complete their training, would they have to pay back their employer incentive training grant bursary?
You do not have to pay back your employer incentive payment. However, depending on what happened at that point that you stopped, you may have the option again to continue depending on what happened, but you have got to be aware that you may not be able to access that funding again. So if you start the programme, it's much better to follow the programme and complete it all in one go.
Is there any chance that the 9 face-to-face days, training days, could be delivered online? And would we need to attend every one of those?
Yes, so we do have the option to attend a virtual group. As I said, we do have training groups across the country, depending on where you're based. And we do say it's beneficial for you to come and meet people. However, we do know for some people, it may be easier to join the virtual sessions, or that might be your preference. So again, you'd be invited to the virtual group, but you are expected to attend each of those because they're focused on different themes of the curriculum, which link in with the work that you're completing.
Thank you. Karen asks an interesting question. Does taking the EYITT qualify me for 30 hours free childcare? I might be able to help and answer that one. The early years initial teacher training doesn't qualify for universal credit as it stands, because technically, according to the HMRC, then you have made yourself unavailable for work. Whether it qualifies you for the 30 hours of free childcare, because that is something that is changing at the moment with current government changes, I'm not 100% sure, but I would recommend you get in touch with the Department for Work and Pensions and ask a question on that for clarification. They may well ask you if you have an offer or if you have an institution that you are talking to, and we're more than happy for you to say that you're considering an application with Best Practice Network. So I hope that helps on that one. Helen, how is early years teacher status certified? Is it by the DFE in the same way as QTS, and how is it recognised?
Yes, it is, again, certified by the DFE. So again, if you are on our programme, you are then part of the DFE register for early years initial teacher training.
A clarification question here about online training and the requirement for placement. So if we take online training, what happens about placement?
If you take online training, you've still got to complete your placement. So they're separate things. There's the training element, and then there's the placement criteria. So everybody has to complete training and also complete placements.
Okay, thank you. Quick one about when do applications close for a January intake?
Rihanna, I think you.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So for January, the applications are due to close, I believe it's around the 7th of January. Is that right? Yeah, I think it got announced a few days ago, but yeah, it'll be around the 7th of January.
I think it's just important to say that there are a limited number of places that we've been given from the Department for Education, so it is a first come, first serve basis. And once we filled our places, we would have to close recruitment. So sooner you apply, the better.
Yes, we have had lots of applications in already.
Helen, do you have a map of local training centres so somebody could see where the nearest one to them would be?
We don't have a map, but again, if you wanted to contact the team, so we can put the email into the chat box again, and you let us know where you are, we'll be able to tell you which is likely to be your closest venue. But just to give you an idea, we do have them running all across the country, north and south. So we have a group currently in Manchester, Leeds, Doncaster, Birmingham, Thetford, London, all over. And then we do have the virtual groups as well. So yeah, if you want to send us an email, we can let you know which one is looking likely to be your closest.
Okay, somebody who's keen to apply, Helen, would like some clarification on how the interview is set out. Do they need to do a task based on play or something related to this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you do have a couple of tasks to complete before you come to your interview. So one is a short literacy task and one is a short numeracy task. So nothing to worry about. They're very much based on normal activities or experience you would have in early years. So they're real life scenarios. You work your way through those, and then when you come to the interview, you do also have a short presentation to make on play. But again, you're able to prepare that before you come to interview. So we'll send you some information about that.
Helen, Rihanna, thank you very much. You are out of the firing line. There are no further questions at this point.
It's good. It's good. We've got lots of questions. Hopefully it's helpful for everybody.
We've got one more. If I wanted to do a second year for Key Stage 1, is it also part-time? So I think, again, that's related to qualified teacher status. Now, if you were to stay on an unemployed route for qualified teacher status, it's exactly the same requirements in that you would have to do 120 days of placement in at least 2 schools covering early years Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. We have between us answered over 50 questions, so I'm hopeful that we've given lots of information out. Helen, Rihanna, you've done a brilliant job. I think you've got one other slide. Helen, have you, with our contact details on for anybody who would like to send us an email?
There we go.
I'm just going to quickly jump in. Well done for answering all those questions, but everybody who signed up and everybody who's attended, thanks for the questions, but we'll send you a copy of Helen's slides. And we'll give you all the links to the EYITT website and stuff.
A few more questions if you've got time, Helen, before we go.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem.
What is the difference in course content between early years initial teacher training and an early years degree?
I would say with the early years initial teacher training, obviously what we're trying to do is prepare you and work towards the early years teacher standards. So, of course, there are some similarities to an early years degree in terms of early years theory or pedagogy, but we're really trying to develop your skills as a teacher. And again, thinking about how you work effectively with parents and your wider professional responsibilities. So it's very much that focus towards developing your knowledge and your skills as a teacher. And as lots of people have asked, that would then prepare you really well if you wanted to carry on down that QTS route.
There's a question here for you, Tom, as you control our website. Will Isabella find all the information she needs on our website?
You should do, yeah. We've got loads of information. We don't have the deadline up there yet, but I think that's going to be the 31st of October. I think you touched on that. But if you scroll down on the EYITT page, then we've got a big FAQ, frequently asked questions, and there's lots of information there. Also, some really good videos if you want to see what other people thought about the qualification. Yeah, videos. We've got brochures, we've got Q&As, we've got a live chat box as well, so that could connect you to Rihanna if you're lucky, and yeah, you can talk to our team through our website.
Thank you. One more, again, around international qualifications. Somebody has a master's degree but not from the UK. Do they have to pass the maths, science and English tests before they can join the programme?
So you would need to have equivalent to an A to C grade, or a grade 4 or above. in math, science, and English. You can still apply, but this would need to be completed before you were to start the course.
Super. Thank you. Okay. Again, we had a little flurry there of questions at the end, but I think we've answered everybody's question now.
Super. Well, thank you to everybody for joining today. And like Tom said, we'll make sure that you can access the slides from today and you've got the email. So if anybody's got any further questions, please do get in touch with us and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.